What's it like to be a nanny? Hello and welcome back to All Things Nanny, the go-to podcast for parents and nannies navigating the world of childcare employment. I'm your host, Helen Phillips, and today we're shining a light on the people who make it all possible, nannies. And we're going to be hearing stories, experiences, and insights on what it really means to be a nanny in today's world. The highs, the challenges, and everything in between. I'm joined by two returning guests in this episode. Jo Williams, otherwise known as Jo the Nanny, a Nannytax Nanny Ambassador who has almost a decade of experience in childcare and early years education. And Sally Britton, Managing Director of Snapcare, an SEN recruitment agency who specialise in matching nannies with the right families. Welcome both back and thank you so much for coming. Okay, I'd like to kick the conversation off with a bit of a deep dive into the different types of nanny roles, because as it turns out, there's quite a lot. Sally, what are the different types of nanny roles out there?
So there are certainly many different roles. We have the daily and live-in nanny, but under that umbrella, there are certainly many, many different roles that meet different needs for families. So we have the rota nanny who might work 7 days off, 7 days on. And that's for families who need to have 24-hour cover. And typically 2 rota nannies would work in a position like that. We also have the before and after school roles, or wraparound care as it's sometimes known. There are holiday nannies, emergency nannies. And of course, my field, we have SEN nannies and SEND nannies, and we differentiate that within special educational needs, which would apply to children who are maybe neurodiverse. And then we have SEND nannies who would work with a child with a disability. We also place people to work as specialist nannies, and that would be where a parent themselves has a disability and they have a nanny to then support their parenting. So they're not taking over and just looking after the child, but they're enabling that parent to parent within the limitations of their disability.
Amazing. Lots of different roles out there. Jo, have you ever taken on something a little bit different from a traditional nanny role?
In my experience, no. I've actually, even though I've been in childcare for a long time, I've only actually ever worked with 2 nanny families. I was with my last family for 6 years.
Wow. And
that was straight from a nursery role that I worked at. 3 children, and I pretty much knew them all from, birth. I even moved into their home when it was lockdown. So I was living there for about a year and a half. I kind of had to adapt, and I had to change the living room into a classroom for the eldest boy who was currently in reception at the time. So yeah, I sort of nanny turned teacher.
Yeah, definitely.
But I was with them for 6 years. And still in touch with them now, big part of my life. And I'm with a new family now who I've been with for about half a year. 3 children again, but it's, similar but very different at the same time.
You've got the variety there.
Exactly.
But it sounds like if you were doing the teaching as well during COVID, I'm sure a lot of sort of nannies and parents had to do similar things.
Yes.
But that sounds...
Oh, yeah. I mean, luckily it was just reception age, so it was quite basic.
Yeah.
If it was like secondary school age, then I probably would have struggled a bit more. Maths is not my thing.
And that leads us on to how you got started, really, where your nanny journey began. So you were a deputy manager, Jo, and a room leader at a nursery before you became a nanny.
Yes.
Why did you move away from the nursery setting to become a nanny?
Well, as fun as it was, I was a key worker for this particular child. And I used to do the odd bit of babysitting for this particular family. They were expecting another child and they wanted a nanny. This is a bit hush-hush in the nursery world because they have like strict poaching policies and things. But
your secret's safe with us, don't
yeah,
we?
I think they know now, but it's fine. We kept it on the sly at the time. They asked me to be their nanny. And I was weighing up all of the pros and cons. I'm really glad that I accepted it and took the job because, I had the best 6 years with them. Yeah.
Amazing. And so you enjoyed the change and the transition?
I did. And like we've talked about before, nurseries and nannies are very different, similar but different. But I think I would stick with nannying for now rather than go back to working in a nursery environment. I think I'm better suited personally, like my personality type is better suited to being a nanny.
And Sally, from an agency perspective, what kind of people are typically drawn to nannying and what makes someone really thrive in this career?
The fundamental is that you must love being with children. I genuinely love being with children because it is a demanding role. Even if it's a mainstream nannying or an SEN nannying role, it is a demanding role, and you need to have the type of personality that is playful, that is positive. You need to keep your negativity at home. You can't bring that into the job when you're working with a child. You've got to be upbeat, you've got to be positive, you've got to be emotionally very resilient. And I think you need to be dedicated and committed. But I think fundamentally that's the key thing, is that you must love to be with children.
I agree.
Oh. Okay, so I thought it'd be nice to talk about a day in the life of a nanny. So I'd love to hear about, Jo, your experiences of a typical day and what it looks like for you, or is there no such thing?
I mean, every day is kind of different, especially I'd say in like the holidays, because we do normally have like a school routine where I would get to work at 7:30. You know, the children will be having their breakfast, and then it's time to get them ready for school, and then it's up and out the door. Whereas during the holidays, you're kind of given like a bit of a clean slate, and you have to, you know, plan in advance for things, book things in advance, you know, plan who you're seeing. And whereas when children are at school, there's, I say, more of a set structure to the day. Less of a structure than I'd say being a nursery. Like, you're not necessarily sticking to times unless the youngest has like a particular sleep routine. It's, you know, lunchtime at, you know, around sort of 1-ish. And then a planned activity in the afternoon maybe, or a bit of free play, dinner at 5-ish, and then I leave at 6:30, and then I'm on my way home. But I work 4 full days a week, and I have Fridays and weekends off. And I think a lot of full-time nannies do that as well, although in my last role I did work the 5 days. But I think because they're such long days, having that day off really does make a difference. So I can come back on the Monday feeling a lot more rejuvenated and ready to seize the week.
Yeah, I can totally believe that. And do you enjoy having that difference between, I guess, the school structure and then having the summer holidays to be able to plan activities?
Yeah, it brings like a new element of fun and excitement. And, you know, the children are always asking, oh, well, where are we going today? Who are we seeing? Whereas I guess with a school day, they know that they're, you know, going to be at school from, you know, 9 till 3 or whatever.
And what's their favourite thing to do? What is the best activity?
Oh, I mean, all 3 of them are so different. So the middle one, he's like obsessed with anything transport. So even just to go like train spotting, they live near a train station. So we will go out and just watch the trains. And there's like a local sort of model village where they have like trains as well that go around, and you can sit on little trains. Whereas the eldest, she loves anything gymnastics, anything that involves like cartwheeling or anything physical. And the youngest just sort of does a bit of everything. Yeah. She just basically just copies the other 2.
It's a challenge to get everyone happy, but you make it work, I'm sure. And Sally, you specialise in SEM placements. What does a typical day look like for nannies that you work with? And how might that differ from a general nanny role?
I think that it is a very different role from me. I've done both. So I started off when I was 18, which is 100 years ago, as a live-in nanny. Then I was a daily nanny. But I always knew that I wanted to work as an SEN nanny. When I started doing it, it wasn't even a title. So it was, we actually came up as Snap, came up with the title of special needs nanny, but it wasn't actually a title. But it is a very different role. There will be therapies that need to be implemented, working with multidisciplinary teams such as physios, OTs, speech and language therapists. And so there will be all of those elements that will need to be basically carried out, but within the structure of the day. And of course, an SEN nanny will always be thinking, okay, that first and foremost, this is a child. The needs are secondary. First of all, it's a child. So anything that is implemented, that needs to be taken into account. So it's implemented in a fun, creative way wherever possible. Sometimes it's not possible. Of course, there are some things that just have to be done. But wherever possible, it needs to be in a fun, kind of creative way. And when we sort of talked about the kind of personality of a great nanny, that really comes into play. Because if you're doing something with a child that they have to have done rather than something they would choose to do, like doing one of the lovely activities that you're talking about, You need to have somebody who's got that real kind of bubbly personality, who can make something fun, which actually probably isn't a whole lot of fun for the child. So the day looks very differently, and sometimes the child might be more restricted in terms of not being able just to go out. Other children, of course, will be able to, but there will be other considerations depending on the child's needs.
And perhaps planned more in advance, I suppose.
Yes, yeah. Yes,
Thank
for sure.
you. Why did you know you wanted to be an SEN nanny?
I think I knew right from a really, really early age. When I was just a child myself, there was a lad who lived over the road who was disabled. And basically nobody really played with him, but I did. I made a point of actually including him and playing with him, and it just seemed the right thing for me to kind of do. And so I think I always had, right from the very beginning, that was sort of a seed, if you like. And then when I went to do my NNEB training, which is a sort of a nursery nursing training, I elected to go and work in an SEN school. And I knew as soon as I'd done that that's what I wanted to do. It was just there. And I think when I'm interviewing SEN nannies, it's either there or it's not. This isn't a job where you can think, well, I don't mind. You've got to have that passion to actually really want to do it. So I did my placement, I did my NNEB, and I knew, though, that I needed to get mainstream experience first, because you need to have the benchmarks of the typical milestones, etc., all of those things. So I did 2 nanny jobs, a live-in job and then a daily job. And then I moved into SEN nannying, and I just knew that was what I wanted to do. And I have to say, I had no experience other than my placement experience, which was only, a couple of terms or something. But I had the right attitude because I knew I wanted to do it. And I do remember the very first day of working as an SEN nanny, I was looking after a little girl who was 2.5, and she has cerebral palsy. And I can remember the very first day, she had very rigid arms because she's like that. And I was thinking, how do I get her dressed? How do I actually get her dressed? But of course, you just work it through, and you kind of go, okay, well, this will work and that will work. And it was a learning curve in terms of, having to sort of take that on, but having the right attitude and knowing where I wanted to get to, that is the key thing, the absolute key thing.
Amazing. It's great that you can sort of remember that first job, and it's so vivid. And how long did you stay with the family for?
2.5 years for that one, yes.
Amazing.
Yes.
Also, I think, like with you, especially, like you've got such a calming demeanour and you seem so like patient, and I feel like you are the perfect match, perfect nanny for that.
Thank you for that. I think it is an absolute, you're right, in terms of you do have to have enormous amounts of patience, because when you're looking at trying to support a child with additional needs, the wins and the gains and the milestones might be minuscule. And so you can't expect, to transform a child's life. And so you've got to be patient and you've got to be consistent and celebrate the wins, no matter how small they are.
And can you see that when you interview someone? Is it apparent as soon as you meet someone?
It is really, yes. And obviously, when we're interviewing, I've been doing it for such a long time now. You can just sort of go, oh yes, this person has it. They have that kind of, and it's, it is, you either have it or you don't have it. And as I say, I think that it is of such a specific role. It's so personal. You need to just really know that you want to do this and have a passion to want to do it, to be able to be a fantastic SEN nanny.
Great. So let's talk about more of the positives and what you love about what you do. Jo, what brings you the most joy as a nanny?
Oh, I mean, I think what you said, it's having that passion and loving what you do. There's a saying, do a job you love and you'll never have to work a day in your life. And I feel like if you find the right nanny family, then that is exactly the right quote for you. I've been very fortunate in my experience, and I find nannying so rewarding, especially when not just, helping to raise these children, even though they're not your own, but, when they hit certain milestones, even things like they've finally cracked potty training, or, they've done really well in some homework that they've given in, or even if it's just a cuddle And sometimes that little cuddle can just mean the world. And you just, you can tell yourself you're doing it right. They trust you, they love you. I think that's a real positive about nannying, and just the bonds that you form as well, not just with the children, but I've been fortunate enough to be on close, friendly terms with my bosses as well in both jobs. And just having that freedom as well with nannying, I think, again, it depends on the family, but when your bosses allow you to have that freedom, the day is your oyster, and you can be free to take the children where you like and do certain activities with them, and all of those things bring me joy as a nanny.
I can see it radiating from you. It's brilliant. And I can totally understand celebrating those milestones and
Absolutely.
how special that is as well.
Yeah, for sure, because it shows that you're doing a good job as well. Yeah.
Amazing. Could you share a moment that made you feel especially proud?
Honestly, just watching the children grow and develop, especially when you've been with them from such an early age. All of the 7 areas, really, of the early years framework that we talked about. So their communication and language changing, and just the way they adapt to life, and, their confidence and how that grows and shows. And just, forming these little bonds, and And
you said you were with your previous family for 6 years, so there must have been quite some milestones that you saw the children achieve in that time.
Many. 6 years is a long time. And I'd actually known the family for 9 years because I knew them from the nursery as well. Yeah, I've literally watched these children grow from babies up to, the eldest is 9 now.
9 years old. Amazing. And Sally as well, can you share a moment that made you feel particularly proud too?
I can. I'm thinking of one particular situation where a mother came to us, and she has quite a severely disabled child. She was basically exhausted because she was needing to be with her child at night as well as during the day. And so she came to us looking for a night nanny. And this would be a night nanny who would basically stay awake. So this mother had been staying awake. I don't know how she managed. I don't know how she'd managed to do it. She must have been absolutely physically and emotionally completely exhausted. So she came to me and said, I need to have, and I don't want to, but I know that I need to, because otherwise this is going to impact on my health, and that's not going to be any good for my child. She actually said to me, and I always remember this phrase, she said, I'm going to have to tell you that I have not yet cut the umbilical cord. That was actually her phrase. And she said, because I'm terrified that my daughter might die during the night. She'd stopped breathing twice before. So that's why she wouldn't let anybody else do that role. I went to meet the family, and we talked it all through, and that gave her hopefully the reassurance that actually we did know what we were doing, and this is what we did. And so then we put in a night nanny. And to start off with, basically there were 3 people watching the child, because both of the parents were not comfortable just leaving, and trusting that the nanny would do what they would do. So there were 3 people actually minding the child overnight. But then, of course, gradually they started to realise actually the nanny did exactly what they would have done. She took it very, very seriously. This was not something to be taken lightly. This child literally could die during the night. And so they then sort of, okay, we think that actually, we can sort of do it maybe just for half the night. As they stepped back, of course, then they actually got some sleep. And so then they started to feel so much better. And this just basically just carried on, and it just took this momentum in a positive way. And it transformed their lives. And so it's not always just about the satisfaction specifically for the child. It can be for the family as a whole. And I think that was one of the ones, because it was tough, because when she said, I haven't cut the umbilical cord yet, she was right. It was very, and that completely understandably as well.
Yeah.
That was one. There are many. I've been doing this for a long time. There are many, but that's one that sort of comes into my mind.
Stayed with you, and it sounds like the quality of life for everyone was improved.
Absolutely.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I do actually have another story, if that's okay, to tell you. This was really about how well a child, a young girl, progressed. So the family came to us, and the child had a physical disability. The parents had been told that their daughter wouldn't walk. And they had been to see various specialists. One of the specialists said that if they were able to implement a very intensive therapy program, which would be done every day and not just for an hour, but an intensive therapy program, physiotherapy program, then that would give their daughter the very best chance to be able to have some kind of mobility. We put in an SEN nanny, and she worked with a physiotherapist. They had a program which was a very intense kind of program. But as we were saying before, that program was implemented with fun, with games and all of those things. But it was an intense program, but it did happen every day. And it was a very, very specific program. So initially, this little girl was really unable to even lift her head up. And so the physio said, okay, before we do absolutely anything, we need to work on her core. So that's all they focused on. They focused on exercises for her core. And then they moved to other areas, and then they developed this program, a very intensive program. I contacted the family to sort of say, how's everything going? And this had been after, I think, about 18 months. They said it was absolutely great, and their daughter was making amazing progress, and she was developing her core and everything, and she had some strength. She was able to lift her head. She was able to do this. She was just starting to actually be able to kind of roll over, so it was working. The next update that I got was a video. And it was a video, and I'm going to get a little bit.
Oh, no, don't stop
I'm
me.
going as
like,
well. We're all
It was a video of this little girl in a little ballet outfit. Wow. Doing a little ballet dance.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say walking, but she was done. Wow. So
amazing.
The family had gone from, your daughter is not going to walk.
That's incredible.
To that. But it was a huge amount of work, and it was a huge commitment for everybody in terms of, from the parents themselves, because obviously the parents were implementing this therapy.
Teamwork.
It was absolute teamwork, and with the physio as well. And it was a very structured kind of like routine. They knew where they wanted to get to, and it was implemented. And this nanny was absolutely fabulous because she gave 100%. But she got 100% satisfaction.
Take my hat off to all of them.
Absolutely.
That's amazing.
Absolutely.
It's so incredible.
That's absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
So special.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that with us.
That was I'm very proud of.
I can believe that. Yeah, it's amazing. Okay, so onwards to the challenges. Every role has really tough parts too, we know that. So let's be honest about what makes it difficult. Jo, what are some of the biggest challenges that you face in your job?
Leaving them.
Oh.
I think as dramatic as it sounds, it's almost like you're grieving. I think because like my last family, I was with them for 6 years, like I said, and you're with them. I mean, in that job, I was there 5 days a week, 7:30 till 6:30. I'm such a huge part of their daily life and routine. And then to suddenly not do that anymore with those children, it's like a moment. It's really tough. And, because you are in essence, helping to raise them. So it's so hard leaving them. But then, you move on, and that's all part of the job. That is the way nannying works. Not many nannies that I know of have ever really stayed with a nanny family for a really long period of time. I'm talking 8 years plus maybe. It's like most jobs, you're in one and then you're into another. So yeah.
I can see it kind of like blurs the lines in a way because you have those emotional ties that you can't help but create with children and families.
Yeah.
I can understand how that would be challenging.
Yeah.
Okay, so since the pandemic, there's been a shift and more parents are working from home now. Has this made an impact on nannies, would you say? And do you think it's made nannying harder?
Yes. I think, before the pandemic, working from home wasn't such a big thing. Especially compared to now. When it was lockdown, I had to move in with my nanny family, but both parents still had to work, which is why I stayed. One of the parents had set up an office in the lounge, and one of them had transformed the garage into another office. In a couple of months, they actually had built an office in the garden, so one of them was out there as well. But it was fairly hard to navigate when I had at the time 2 children to look after, with the parents constantly being around. Credit where credit's due. They did their best to try and keep out of my way, because they know that when they were around the children, their behaviour would often change for the worse.
Wow.
And it would make my job slightly more difficult and challenging. But I think the children knew what was going on. Luckily, I did have quite a large space where I could, accommodate both of their needs. But I was, helping to teach one and then trying to occupy the other with another activity or what have you. But I would say having the parents around is it does make a nannying job a little bit harder, I'd say. Yeah.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Sometimes it can't be helped. And, like I said, these days, a lot of parents are working from home. But if they can have like a separate space to do that, that's more ideal. Yeah.
Sally, would you agree?
Yes, and I think it's about setting up the boundaries and having that discussion with between the parent and the nanny at the beginning, because otherwise there's misunderstanding and children can't be expected to just sort of make understand what the rules are, make the rules up themselves. So it's got to be that it's actually discussed between the nanny and the parent, and really they're sort of saying, okay, well, when I'm working from home and the nanny is basically looking after you, so and you set the rules and then you convey those to the children and then you stick by them and you're consistent, because you must, the parent must support the nanny in terms of what has been agreed. In our situation where we're talking about SEN nannies, it is slightly different because SEN nannies are very used to working with a parent, typically a mother, because it's kind of a mini team. And so I know a lot of mainstream nannies would only take jobs if they're sole charge jobs. I absolutely, I know that.
Sorry, sole charge job means
sole charge means that you're just looking after the child.
Yeah,
the parents are not there at all. A lot of mainstream nannies would only consider those kind of jobs.
I can vouch for that.
Yes, and I do understand that. I mean, I've had experiences as well. Many years ago, I worked as a temporary nanny. I have to say, I was very pleased that it was a temporary job, because the person that I was working for, then the mother I was working for, was at home. She wasn't working, but she was still at home. She wanted to micromanage absolutely everything. And that was tough. It was very, very difficult because you can't actually do your job. So I do understand that. But I think that, as I say, with SEN nannies, they're much more used to actually working as a team and welcome that, because, if you're in that sort of environment, you're all pulling together for the same objective. So I think it is slightly different.
Yeah, I can understand that. So it's that clear boundaries, the conversation from the start that would help in those instances.
Yes, definitely.
Amazing, that makes sense. And Sally, what are some of the biggest misconceptions you encounter from families, especially when it comes to hiring a nanny to a child with additional needs?
So I think one of the misconceptions is that we have parents who quite often say, oh, but nobody would want to work with my child because their behaviour is this, or you have to do this because they've got really complex kind of needs. And I think it's a huge weight off their mind, when actually we say, no, people choose to do this job. They choose to be an SEN nanny. They don't want to be a mainstream nanny. They choose to do this. And, as a parent, unless you actually choose to adopt a child with a disability, no parent actually goes through a pregnancy thinking, well, I'm going to have a disabled child. It's not a choice. It's been something that has happened to them. And so I think sometimes that can be a bit of a misconception, that actually there's nobody out there who would want to do it, or there's nobody out there who could do it quite as well as I do it, because my child's needs are so specific. And of course they are specific, but also there are people out there who have those fantastic, qualities, experience, skills and everything. So I think that's one of the misconceptions. Maybe another misconception is that if you have a live-in nanny, no, they're not on call 24/7.
Yeah.
They do actually have set hours. And I have had that conversation when I said, no, I don't need 2 people because I'll have a live-in nanny. Okay, who's going to work 7 days a week, 24 hours on call. So I think that's something. And sometimes people just haven't thought it through, in terms of, if you're having a live-in nanny, you're providing their home as well. But they're just like any other nanny, that they have set hours. Those hours might be a bit more flexible and might be longer, but they have their sort of set hours.
It's great that you caught that with the parents, sort of like discussing that from the start, rather than that nanny having to go through I suppose, that conversation of, I suppose setting boundaries is really important regardless. But
it is. And when you sort of talk about a kind of a live-in nanny, I think, again, just in the way we're talking about if a parent is working from home, you have to have those conversations and that agreement about what actually a live-in nanny, what their hours are, because the parent has to say to the child, okay, after 7 o'clock, you can't just go and ask Mary, to do this. You have to ask me to do this. And so those boundaries need to be set. But the parents need to set them as discussed, and then they need to implement them and then back up the kind of nanny, because it is difficult. I mean, we've been there.
Yeah,
I can see you both.
Nodding along.
Yeah, you've had experience. Have you got any experiences you want to share of when this might have happened? Or
I did in my very first nannying job, which was a live-in nanny job, and my bedroom was right next to a little boy there were 2 boys, and I think he was about 18 months, and he was very prone to waking up very early, and he would kind of call my name rather than because I was next door, and I was kind of like, and of course I was 18, and I was like, okay, my day isn't really supposed to start at 5 o'clock, but he sounds like he really needs somebody, so of course I would go to it, and then of course you set that terrible pattern, and well, it wasn't terrible, but it was kind of like you live and learn, let's just say.
And how do you set boundaries with an 18-month-old? I suppose it's different to.
Yeah.
Yes, but again, I think that's more about kind of, really agreeing with the parents, actually, when does your day start and everything. And, in hindsight, maybe it could have been managed a bit better that I wasn't sort of doing that. But, I'm still friends with them. It was a learning curve, let's just say. Yes, yeah.
Jo, have you got any?
So I've got a nanny friend who's a live-out nanny, and she was helping to plan the child's birthday party. And usually the parents would often hang around, but I think because she was there as a nanny, the parents took advantage of that and left. So she was kind of left with all of these children.
Running the whole party. And she's like, hang on a minute, this isn't what I signed up for. Yeah.
There's just an example of where parents might just overstep the mark a bit with just expecting too much from a nanny when that's not actually their job to look after everyone else's child. It should be, primarily their own charges. Yeah.
When you're talking about sort of nannying, I think that it's the lines can get blurred. It's a very personal job. You're working in someone's home, and as we've discussed, the nanny will get very attached to the child, and the child will get very attached to the nanny, and so those lines are constantly. And so sometimes it can actually be seen that it's not really a job, and so especially if people sort of stay a long time, those lines can get very blurred. And I would always give people the advice to both nannies and to parents is to retain a bit of professional distance. Yes, you're going to be friendly. Yes, you're going to be, all of those things that we've talked about. But actually, parents need to recognise that it is a job for the nanny, and the nanny needs to recognise exactly the same, that is their employer. And I think that to blur the boundaries too much can lead to difficulties. Because if you're really kind of just being friends and you're being in that sort of situation, it's very difficult then to actually either say, for the parent to say to the nanny, actually, I don't really like the way that you're doing this. Could you do this? Or equally from the nannies to the parents' perspective to sort of say, it's very difficult to kind of go, I'm sorry, but you're late again. You keep coming in. My hours, I finish at 7. I understand sometimes you might be stuck in traffic. but you're consistently coming in at 8 o'clock. And, sort of that can sort of leach in a little bit if the boundaries are a bit too blurred. So I would advise people to keep an element of professional separation, if you like.
Yeah, that's really good advice. Thank you.
And how do you manage that work-life balance as a nanny?
I think I'm quite good at just shutting off. I think I've always been quite good at not letting my work life interfere with my personal life. And when it comes to, the end of the day on a Thursday, that's when I can press the pause button and I can crack on with my weekend and all the plans I have. I like to, keep my mental health at a good rate. So, doing exercise is important to me, and socializing as well is a huge distraction. And yeah.
Amazing. And Sally, have you got anything that you can share about what you do or things you might advise the nannies in your
Sure, yes. I mean, I think that within my particular industry, the people that do this job are empathetic. They have to be. But that comes at a price. So if you're empathetic, there is a certain tendency, well, not a certain tendency, there is a tendency to take on things that are very difficult. And with a lot of our families, they are going through extremely difficult times. And these are not things that are going to suddenly miraculously resolve. These are going to be potentially lifelong stresses. So I think that it's really important for both myself, my staff in the office, well, our virtual office, and also the nannies that we place, is to be very mindful that is potentially going to happen. That, if you have a child who has a difficulty, you're likely to actually take that on emotionally yourself. You can see the stress that the family are going on, you can take that on yourself. I mean, I've had numerous kind of experiences myself when I've spoken to a family and I've put the phone down and you think, oh, wow, some people's lives are very, very difficult. So what do I do to actually address that? Again, I do things, I'm very physically active. I do yoga every morning. I go swimming, I go cycling. I do a lot of that. And I think that really helps. But I think fundamentally what we need to really be thinking is acknowledging taking on that kind of stress. Everybody's going to be different about how they actually manage that kind of stress. But what I always say, and I say this to the recruiters and I say this to nannies as well, is that yes, the situations that you're dealing with can be very difficult, very stressful, and you're sort of taking that on. But what you do makes a difference. And that's really powerful, because if you're taking on all of this and sort of thinking, oh my goodness, this family, they've got so much going on. If you can't do anything, it's got nowhere to go. You've got nothing to do. But actually, what we're doing, what my team are doing, the recruiters, the admin, all of those people, and obviously the nannies, they are making a difference. And so they can actually help those families be in a less stressed kind of situation. And so it's about acknowledging that you could well take that on because you're probably an empathetic person, because that's why you're doing this job. And you need to know yourself how you're going to manage that, whether that's talking it through with people. We often have this in the team. Something will happen, and sometimes, unfortunately, we work with children who do sadly pass away because they have very complex needs. We always have a team meeting to talk through, because we've all got attached to that person. We don't know them, we don't see them every day, but we do kind of know them. So, and obviously for a nanny in that situation, we make sure that we're always in contact with them and we talk to them and we advise them that maybe they need to go and get some counselling as well, because they're part of the family but not part of the family. So it can be a very sort of tricky situation. So I think it's about finding out what is right for you in terms of addressing that kind of stress, knowing that actually what you're doing is making a huge difference, and talking it through and making sure that, everybody, has supported each other.
I think adding on from that as well, talking about stress and overexertion as well, I think a nanny also has a right to say no.
Yes.
You know, if the parent was to say, oh, can you do this extra bit of babysitting tonight? You can say no. I think a lot of nannies just automatically feel they have to say yes, or they feel bad for letting them down, or same with like calling in sick sometimes. Sometimes if I'm really not well and I have to call my bosses, I feel bad doing it and letting them down because I know that one of them will probably have to take the day off work. You can say no. You can, you know, call in sick if you're really sick, you know. Yeah, having that balance and not, you say, stressing out, not overexerting yourself.
That's really good advice. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Okay, so to wrap up, let's offer some advice. What's your golden tip for someone considering becoming a nanny?
I think it's best to have some sort of experience, whether you're, you know, from a nanny background or, you know, like myself, I came from a nursery background. Any qualifications definitely help, because at the end of the day, your future employers are going to read your CV. The better it is, and the more experienced you are, then the more likely it is for them to hire you as their nanny. So I think, yeah, get some experience, gain some qualifications if you can. Like, for example, I've got an NVQ level 3 in early years and childcare, but there are other things out there. Or you can, you know, go to college. There's Norland College out there. I think there's one, is it Chiltern College? You know, there's various colleges that you could go to where you can, you know, get a degree as well. So yeah, I think those sorts of things definitely are what employers would look for and what I suggest a nanny should do.
Amazing. And Sally, have you got any golden tips for us?
I mean, they're very similar. And I think that, yes, getting experience is absolutely great. And we have people, I had actually quite recently a 16-year-old who called up, and she was one of those people that got it. She was 16, but she got it, but she's 16. So, you know, it's too soon. And so I said to her, get some voluntary experience, absolutely get some volunteering experience, because not only do you get the experience, but you then show that you've done it and you've committed to doing it. And sort of taking your point about the kind of like the CV and everything, when we look at CVs, it's got to speak about who that person is. So a parent will be employing a person. It's not, they're not going to come and fit double glazing. You know, it's going to look after your child. So they want to be able to see who this person is. So you've got to give yourself in your CV. So it's not just about I did this, I did that, I did that. It's what I did and how it helped that child. It's about really bringing out your personality and making sure that you're telling a story, you're telling your journey about how you got to be there. So in that example of the 16-year-old that I spoke to, if her CV comes back in sort of 3 years' time and it actually says on her CV, I actually knew that I wanted to do this when I was 16, but I realised I needed to get some voluntary experience. So that's exactly what I did. Here's my voluntary experience. And then I went on and I got a qualification. I knew I wanted to work with a child, but I wanted to have a practical kind of application as well. So I learned Makaton signing, whatever that might be. If that was then on her CV, any one of my recruiters are going to look at that and kind of go, oh, interesting. That's interesting, because you could see who the person is. So I think that, you know, when you're looking to do this, yes, get some experience. Make sure it really is what you want to do, because, you know, this is not a job that you want to start and they go, nah, actually, this is not for me. It's kind of like, you know, people make a big investment in a nanny, both emotionally and financially. And so get some experience, really find out if actually you do love being with children, because if you don't, really, you know, this is not the job for you. And then, yes, look at how you can actually then get the best kind of experience and then present yourself in your CV, but present you. Don't just present a list of kind of like, you know, things that you did.
And I guess that's really important so that you find a family that you want to work with as well as a nanny. It's a two-way street.
Yeah, you're choosing them as well. So, yeah, you have to have that immediate feel. I think as well, adding on from what you were saying, I think a lot of parents as well look for nannies who can drive as well. Right. So like, because in essence, you become a bit of a chauffeur when you're a nanny. There are a lot of places you have to take the children to. So I think having like a clean and full driving license would be a must for most parents, I'd say. And also being trained in paediatric first aid, I think, is another one. I've actually just renewed mine now, so that's up to date, which is good. But I think that's important. But again, that sort of thing can be also done whilst you're working for your family. And you can also ask them as well, would you rather I be Ofsted registered or not? Because I'm not an Ofsted registered nanny. You don't have to be, but some families prefer it because it's more beneficial to them.
What do you have to do to become an Ofsted nanny?
I believe that it's they have sort of a set criteria in terms of you have to have a first aid course, and you have to basically do make a sort of an application and meet a minimum level of requirements. And I think it's NVQ level 2 is the minimum sort of requirement. And I have to say that most of the people that we work with aren't Ofsted registered. And I think it's a bit of a bone of contention in terms of, is it enough? What they actually, and it's a voluntary thing. So it's kind of like some people are, some people aren't. Yeah, I think that, there should be a standard for nannies, because nannies are basically working without any supervision often, and there isn't any actual recognition of what they must have, because they must have a DBS,
of course, yeah.
but they don't legally, they don't have to. A nanny can start without a DBS. They can just look after a child without a police check.
Didn't know that.
But obviously, with us, I mean, we're very strict about who we sort of put forward. But all of those things in terms of, wanting to actually be a nanny, you've got to look at all of those things. You say driving is a huge kind of thing, in terms of, if you don't drive, you're not going to have access to the jobs that need a driver. So, to keep your options open. All of those skills that you can bring that show a commitment as well, show a commitment to that's what you really want to do.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Great advice there. And finally, across your careers, what have been your biggest learning moments?
So my learning moment was when I very first opened Snap Care, and I was speaking with a parent, and I'd gone to meet her and to find out, what she was looking for. And I made the cardinal sin of assuming. So I just assumed various things that would be what she was looking for. I was projecting really what I would be looking for. And so I didn't really take into consideration the individual needs of that family at that time. And I say this was a long time ago. We're talking sort of 24 years ago. And in that situation, I actually recruited the wrong person, and it failed. And of course, I took a step back, and it was like, okay, why did I fail on this? And it was because, okay, you made an assumption. And I think it's a really, really important kind of point, not just for me and my recruiters when you're talking to a family, but about nannies as well. Don't just assume that you know what the parents actually want. Ask them and make sure that you really do understand what they want. And in the same way, a parent has to do that with the nanny. Don't just assume that they're going to do that. Sometimes you have to say, okay, well, actually, I really want you to do it this way, or I want, this is really important to me. And of course, it's all about communication. It's about actually communicating. It's asking the right questions, and it's feeling that you're in an environment where you can do that, because the objective should be the same. It should be meeting the child's needs as best can be. And so, don't assume. And I always say that to my recruiters. It's like, do not assume, always ask.
That's such good advice. Thank you, Sally. And Jo, have you got any learning moments or anything?
Yeah, I have. It's more of kind of, I guess, a bit of a mistake on my part, where I was doing the school. So when I accepted this current job that I'm in, I was told that the children walk to and from school every day with me, that I'll be pushing the buggy with the little one in, and then the two older children will be on their bikes in front of me without stabilisers. They're very competent cyclists. However, there's a particular part of road on this commute which is so narrow, where the road only, single traffic can come down. The pavement is like this, and my heart is in my mouth every time I do that commute. And very recently, I made the mistake of maybe not bringing a first aid kit out with me is probably one thing. I think because I've always got in my head that I need to have, the children's school bags, the children's coats for school. Whereas I'm thinking, if a situation like an accident occurs on the way to school, how am I going to deal with that? And a few weeks ago, the boy was cycling along. Suddenly the sister went, "Let's race." He tried to keep up with her, couldn't. I could see that, when you just see moments flashing before your eyes. It was like going in slow motion. I could see the handlebars going like this. Next thing I know, he's flying over the handlebars and he's fallen onto his face and grazed the whole right side of his face here. And in that moment, I thought, oh, goodness me, I've got nothing. I had like a tissue. That's all I had on me. So I guess the learning point from this could be always carry a first aid kit on me. I definitely needed more than just a tissue in that moment. Luckily, because it was the busy school run, I had parents coming to my rescue, offering me plasters, offering me, wipes and things like that as well. I know not to make a huge fuss, make a huge deal, because it's so easy to go, "Oh, are you okay? What's the matter?" I think just literally reassuring him, giving him a cuddle was all that he needed in that moment. And he soon calmed down and everything was okay. But yes, it is a scary moment when things like that happen. And just, doing that school commute in general is pretty tough.
I think I'd feel the same. Yeah, I can believe that. So that brings us to the end of today's episode of All Things Nanny. And a huge thank you to you both for sharing your experiences and insights so openly and honestly. Thank you both.
It's been great to be here.
Yeah, it's been brilliant.
Nannies do life-changing work in the most personal of settings. Whether you're a parent hiring for the first time or someone considering the profession, we hope today's episode really helped you to see the real heart and value behind this role. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with someone who'd find it useful. Until next time, I'm Helen Phillips, and this has been All Things Nanny. Thanks for listening.